Chelsea links with Saudi Arabia raised plenty of questions. Having splashed the cash over the last 2 transfer windows, Chelsea are on a mission to balance their books this summer. Plenty of questions have inevitably been asked about how they can go about shifting several underperforming players off their books. I mean, their squad was so big that they couldn't even run practice good enough. They had players changing outside of the dressing room, because their squad was just too big, and they're very, very top heavy, and they were just horrible. I mean, if we're being super honest, in terms of like fit, in terms of like coaches, in terms of they had no vision, and Todd Bowley, American, came in and just was buying players for some reason, not really knowing how anything works. So plenty of questions have been inevitably been asked about how to shift the players off their books. Unlikely salvation appears to present itself in the form of Saudi Pro League, which has bought a lot of different players. So they've already got Kante from Chelsea, but that was on a free, I believe. So they have Kante. They have Benzema, who's done. They obviously have Cristiano Ronaldo. We just saw Koulibaly, who is of Chelsea. Let me see. Mendy and Ziyech are reportedly on their way as well. So that's 2 more. That's 2 more already. And Aubameyang and Lukaku, which would be, obviously 2 more. Lukaku, I think, is a little bit further. I think he might not, but we'll see. Blues players linked with Saudi moves. While these potential moves could ease significant headache for Chelsea, they have also sparked plenty of debate in football circles. Now, let's see. Central to the discussions in the relationships between Chelsea majority owners Clear Lake Capital Group, which obviously Todd Bowley is the head of, and Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, PIF. The latter, so Saudi Arabia Public Investment Fund, has billions of pounds worth of assets managed by the private equity group, which is Clear Lake Capital. So, which raises questions about a conflict of interest, which is, of course, like, it is insane. They manage their money. And so if they're bad, if they're doing bad, and if they can help each other out by selling players, then they're obviously helping them out an insane amount, on top of which PIF own Newcastle United, a factor which immediately raises alarm bells about Chelsea's burgeoning links with the Saudis. So not only do the Saudis already own a team which has seen their stock rise significantly in Newcastle, and they're in the top 4 now, they also are obviously linked with Chelsea through Clear Lake Capital. Okay? A more pertinent issue to consider is the growing influence private equity is having in the football industry. And so there has already been some questions about multi-team ownership. Like, I think Ratcliffe already owns a team in France, and then he also submitted a bid for Manchester United, which obviously raised questions. The Qataris and their links, obviously, and they own PSG. So there's a lot of questions about the money and basically sports washing. The best way, I think, to see it and to put it as well, in which they're, I mean, do we want to say ruining? I would say ruining. The only reason why is that they're throwing, it's not organic, and they're throwing around this money, hyperinflating all these prices, hyperinflating what's going to be tickets, what's going to be, merchandising, what's going to be rights, and then because it's so hyperinflated, it's not because it's so not real that there could be a crash. And I think that it's so weird to think about, but because it's football, it's not like it's not like the real estate market. It's not like, housing costs could go down or whatever the case. Like, it's something so foreign. However, it is such a massive, massive business that, again, you never want to see hyperinflation in anything. And so when you see that hyperinflation in football, there's just a lot of things that can go very, very bad. Okay? I mean, if Clear Lake Capital, were to go down, we'd have to see what kind of assets they manage, what happens to the teams, and then they're going to have to sell them these overinflated prices for players, for salaries. These are all things that have to be looked at and looked at carefully. And one thing that they do to get around it, especially for those teams, so let's set it up real quick. So there is financial fair play in world football. There is, your losses can't exceed or have to be within certain realms of gains, etc., etc. That's why it's very important for teams to make Champions League, because you get more money. If you finish higher, you get, a little more money, whatever the case might be. And so you have that, and you also have sponsorships. Now, and I noticed it in Newcastle specifically. I'm sure PSG has done a lot. And from what we've seen, allegedly, Manchester City is under investigation for 115 counts of this. And this is overinflation. So let's say, let's make it real small. Let's say, like places like Amazon do it, like big places do it. But let's say you're a small company, you're a mom and pop, and you buy a sponsorship with a team, and you spend whatever, 150,000 for a sponsorship. Well, the team could write that off. Hey, we have all these losses because of wages, because of infrastructure, whatever the case might be, but they have a gain in that they're selling sponsorship, they're selling commercials, they're selling naming rights, whatever it is. But those three teams, I think, allegedly, and I've seen it with Newcastle and one, that they list these companies that, hey, I sold X company a commercial, let's say, or X company is gonna make my shirts. And a lot of times when you look up these companies, I mean, their websites aren't even done. And so that's how one allegedly would launder money. So it's not a surprise if Amazon pays $2 million for Arsenal to do that documentary, right? Let's just say Arsenal had a documentary. That's not that weird, because Amazon is huge. They're a gigantic company. But it'd be weird if, it makes it kind of difficult, but it'd be weird if there's a cleaning company, there's a dry cleaning company that pays $2 million for a shirt or whatever sponsorship, right? Like, it's just, which one do we think is more likely that paid $2 million? It's just things like that. That's how teams theoretically and allegedly, Newcastle, PSG, and Manchester City are getting away with it. That's how allegedly they're getting by these financial fair play things, is that they say, oh, look, this company gave me $2 million. Well, that company is just to front almost. And so when you're doing things like that, when you're having to launder, money like that, that's what makes it tough. Like, that's what makes it, when you're doing things like that, obviously in general, it's not good. And so you just see things like that, and I think that people are correctly saying that it's pretty clear and blatant corruption, and I think everybody's just kind of sick of it. But anyway, a more pertinent issue to consider is the growing influence of that. While the business links between Clear Lake and PFI are all above board, obviously, two companies do business together isn't news. The potential for each party to influence football decisions cannot be ignored. Football authorities have largely failed to get a handle on growing influence of states and private equity groups in the sport. While Chelsea seemingly on the cusp of conveniently resolving their financial fair play, which financial fair play, again, has kind of largely been a joke up until this point. I guess we'll see what happens, but it has been. The dereliction of duty may have lasting impact on football worldwide. While the Premier League giants will argue that they can sell their players to whoever they want, there is undoubtedly a funny smell around the Saudi fire sale. Unless you wander around wearing blue-tinted spectacles, it's not easy to envision. I cannot say the current developments are good news for football. So again, I mean the potential is huge. And here we see Gary Neville, who obviously Manchester United legend. Gary Neville on Saudi Arabia buying Chelsea players, which I think might come to a head when Manchester United are bought, because Manchester United potentially are going to get into the same kind of trouble. But anyway, the Premier League should put an instant embargo on transfers to Saudi Arabia to ensure the integrity of the game isn't being damaged. Checks should be made on the appropriateness of the transactions. If it comes through that process, obviously transfers could open up again. But I do believe at this moment in time, transfers should be halted until you look at the ownership structure at Chelsea and whether they are beneficial transfer dealings that are improper. Like, this is where it kind of gets to me as well. Where the question really is, I mean, when you have such a broad description of improper or proper, I mean, what's improper or what's proper? Proper to who? It just seems weird. Let me see some of the comments. He'd have no problem if these players were going to the U.S. I mean, yeah, but at the same time, they're not paying those leagues. Let's see. Let's see here. I think it boils down to people. I think what it boils down to is people are jealous. There are a lot of clubs out there that want to be competitive. They see Chelsea are weak because they had a bad season, and now they see Chelsea as a threat again because Chelsea are able to go and buy again because they're selling very, very well again. Is there a reason Jordan Henderson couldn't be sold to Saudi Arabia? Son, Fred, McTominay? No, there isn't. Everyone can do it. Chelsea just have more players to do it with. Again, that seems that seems tough. PFA majority stakeholders in 4 Saudi clubs just happen to be major investors in Clear Lake, who own Chelsea. Chelsea happen to need shift players due to 600 mil spending transfer last season. Without connections, this nothing would be said. That is true, and I think that is blatantly untrue. Clear Lake Capital have a cap of 5% on any investor holdings. Let me see. PFI are also major investors in Chelsea's majority stakeholder. They have billions of pounds of assets managed by Clear Lake. Yeah, I mean, I think it is.
Because obviously Chelsea have spent so much money, £600 million over the last 2 windows. They need to balance their books. They need to sell some of their players. And out of the blue, suddenly the Saudis have come along and said, yeah, we'll have some of your players and we've got £100 million to give you. So people from the outside are looking in and maybe saying, looks a little bit strange. Suddenly you've come up with a way to balance the books. And people have also said that the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia, who owns these Saudi clubs, has also invested in a US private equity fund Clearlake Capital, who are majority shareholders at Chelsea. And people have sort of tried to see if there's something strange going on there. But from what we're being told, that has got nothing to do with it. The Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia, the Sovereign Wealth Fund, invest in lots of private equity firms all over the world, and Clearlake has investments in like 400 different companies. So Chelsea would say that there is absolutely no conflict of interest there whatsoever. But obviously, you know, you're going to be hearing a lot more about players moving to clubs in Saudi Arabia, because I think the Saudis are here to stay. They're very, very serious about this. And obviously they've got the money basically to do what they want.
Yeah, again, that it is interesting. The only thing that I would say is that it does seem that there is a conflict of interest. At what point does it cross like inappropriateness or breaking the law is really, really difficult to say. Like, I'm not trying to be politically correct or anything like that. It's just because they have that investment, they can easily, like, Clearlake Capital, who owns Chelsea, would clearly want to appease a client of theirs. And if it is true that they have billions of assets parked at Clearlake Capital, then obviously that they would want to make them happy, right? They're successful. So I think it is weird. It is weird to see, you know, does it cross legality? It's hard to say. I mean, it really is. It's difficult to say. But I think Saudi Arabia and the PIF, the fund, I mean, they've already basically bought golf, and that's being under investigation in the U.S. They have a massive, massive investment in, I think, wrestling, if not bought it out, like the WWE, if I'm not mistaken. They have massive investments in other clubs that they've bought, as well as they're trying to grow their own league. And so whatever we think, again, this isn't, you know, I'm not a politics guy. This isn't politics. But they do seem to be diversifying that investment pretty crazily.